Quick overview of Adobe InDesign. So, Adobe InDesign is a software designed for text-based documents. Adobe Photoshop works well with photographs. Adobe Illustrator works well with graphics. And if you want to have text and manage that text with those things, Adobe InDesign is where it comes together. So this is for making publications. As you can see, I have some random yearbook spreads still visible from my recent documents, but it really is a program that works with these other programs very well. It doesn't do much on its own, frankly. Where it excels is it takes the resources, the files from Illustrator or Photoshop, and manages them and links them all in one document. The advantage of which is you can edit your photos in Photoshop, drag them into InDesign. You can manage your graphics if they're more complex in Illustrator, and then drag them into InDesign. And then, should you go back and make changes to either of those in Photoshop or Illustrator and save it, it will automatically update in InDesign. So let's go over some of the very basic tools on what we're going to need to create a document. So let's go create new. Hopefully the computer is not too laggy here. I'm going to show you the formatting and the project setup for our specific project. Different projects, different books, magazines are going to have different settings. So we'll just get started with print because that'll set up similar to what we need. Units. Its default is picas, which is really a standard in publishing. Picas and points, you can probably imagine, points as in like 12-point font, are units of measurement on a very small scale, which are ideal for adjusting details in a layout. Let's just stick with something we know. Let's go ahead and switch the units to inches. I'm going to set my width to 18 inches and my height to 12 inches. Pages we can just leave as 1 and they'll be facing pages. That's just fine for what we need. And then columns. So columns are going to be a really nice design aid. I like 8. You can do more or less. But 8 is what I want us to have it set up on for the type of project we're doing. Margins. Default's 1/2 inch, and that's just fine. Bleed. Bleed's the line that we want to extend to beyond the page. If we have any elements that are going to go off the page, we want them to go all the way to the bleed, because when they cut the actual paper, there can be some variation on that. So we're going to set it just to 1/8 of an inch is fine. And that's all we need to do there. Go create. And we should end up with a blank document. We have our margins, our columns, our margin around the outside, and that red line extending beyond our actual white paper is the bleed. That's, again, where we'll take any elements that we want to go off the page or lead all the way up to the edge. They need to go past the edge all the way to the bleed. So we've set up our document. Let's look at some of the basic tools we're going to be using. The first one I want to show you is probably actually default set to a rectangle, and it's a shape tool. This one's going to be very similar to what you would have used for Illustrator. It makes a shape. So currently the shape is set to no fill, a black stroke of 1 point thickness. But we can mess with that. Let's switch it to no stroke, and let's make it a blue box for fun, huh? We can play around with all those settings. So as you change tools, much like the other programs, yeah, it's a little laggy here, but this options bar up top will change. So we've looked at different, if you right click on this, you see some other shape options, and you can go back and change shapes as you need. So that's our shape tool. Of course, we have our old friend, the pen tool, that works the same way as it always has, and you can create shapes that way. You have your general selection tool, and then also your direct selection tool, so you can click on a direct point and modify the anchors or the point itself there. Okay. So we have those tools available to us. I think my computer is being put to the test with just some simple shapes. Let's see, what else do we need? Our text tool. So that's also going to be fairly similar. Here's where we can start maybe using some of the columns. Line. To use these correctly, you would have your objects align with the edge of the columns. Now, notice there's a space between these columns. I didn't use that. I just filled it from here, and I crossed into a second column, and then ended at the end of the other column. And I'll just fill this with some text I got off the internet. And look at this little box right here. Let me zoom in. This right here indicates there's text that is being cut off. It will not fit with the current size in this text box I have. So solutions. All right, let's go like that. And let's make another text box. Okay. Did you see those green arrows pop up, helping guide me into getting exactly the same sort of box size? So what I can do is I think perhaps I need my text tool selected. I should be. Oh no, you're gonna ruin the video. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, it was the only word. So what I did is I double clicked actually on that indicator that said that there was text being cut off, and then I just clicked again on the new text box, and it took that one last word over. We can solve this in a couple different ways. I'll just increase the text so that it bleeds over. That's a weird spot. Again, this was just random text I copied from the internet, so not necessarily formatted correctly, but if I did want to format it correctly, I have all these options up here. So we've got things for left align, center, right align. We can justify, meaning it will make the width of each line consistent. It looks nice and clean, but it can create some weird issues with odd amounts of spacing or cut off words like in addition. Like, that's a very uncomfortable way for viewers to read this. You can add other elements like having the start of each paragraph be a dominant element, or really if I had just had it selected, it would just be the first word. And that's a nice lead into the main text they're supposed to read. Let's see, text pictures. We need pictures, of course, and we have for that our frame tool. So let's use this columns again. So this has created a box with an X through it, and this is where we can place pictures. When doing layout, what's more important often is the actual position and size and ratio of the photograph within the layout rather than how it existed as a photograph. So I'm going to grab a photo off of just my computer, and it placed it. Now I'll click on it and see this circle. If I click on the circle, I can see and manipulate the photograph itself within the frame. Okay, so see how it's got a grabby hand here? I can move the picture within the frame. I can hold shift, resize the picture within the frame. But of course, if I want to change the frame itself, I could do that. So you can plan out your layout without having the photograph on there, which is just a nice tool to get things like an eye line and things like that effective. We have our picture box, and I won't show it, but I will say that if I opened this picture back up in Photoshop and then resaved it the same way that it had been before, InDesign will recognize that and update this photo on the spread. So really, that's all the basic elements. You know, if you want to add more text for a headline, you could add that text and make it real large here. But if you wanted to do something more graphical with maybe an Illustrator to make it interesting, more complex headline, you would just copy and paste either as a PDF or the actual vector file itself can just be dragged and dropped straight into here. You don't have to save it and open it again. It plays very well with Photoshop and Illustrator open at the same time. The last thing maybe we'll say is saving. So there's a couple different ways to do that. You can save as InDesign file. So this will keep all of the document and everything the way you liked it. You'll be able to modify things. I'll also say, as we have a moment, W. Oh, W does nothing if you're trying to type, but W is a hotkey, shows you a preview of what it'll look like without all those guides. Because it can get pretty heavy with guides. You know, you can click on the ruler up here and add horizontal, or click over here, vertical guides to make sure things are lined up and use as a reference. And that really clutters things up. So that can show you a clean version. Back to saving. So save as if you want to save it as an InDesign file, but make sure that you keep all of your graphics and photographs on the same computer that it has access to, so InDesign knows where it was saved. But we can also export. Let's say we are done, we are ready to print this. Export as a PDF. Adobe PDF. That'll give us a single document with everything on there, and it can just be sent as one thing. Otherwise, if you want to move this and move all the links, what you would need to do is package. This will literally package up all of the photographs and other reference links in one thing. You can move it then as a whole thing to another computer or location. I believe that should be enough for you to get going on the basics of InDesign.